Our Bible reading, it is in Exodus chapter 13, starting at verse 17, and it goes to the end of chapter 14. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. For God said, if they faced war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around the desert roads towards the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of Egypt armed for battle. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him because Joseph had made the sons of Israel swear an oath. He had said, God will surely come out to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up with you from this place. After leaving Succoth, they camped at Etham on the edge of the desert. By day, the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night, a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and camp near Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. They are to camp by the sea, directly opposite Baal-zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did this. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, what have we done? We have let the Israelites go and have lost their services. So they had his chariot made ready and took his army with him. He took 600 of the best chariots, along with all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers all over them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites, who were marching out boldly. The Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea near Pi-Hahiroth, near Baal-zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us out to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. Moses answered the people, do not be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. Then the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. And I will gain glory through the Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots and his horsemen. Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night, the cloud brought darkness to one side and light to the other, so neither went near the other all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with the strongest east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He made the wheels of their chariots come off so that they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, let us get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing towards it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the great power that the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant.
Well, good morning. Good morning. It's a packed house this morning. Good to see you. Excuse me. Don't worry, it's not COVID. But it could be. If you don't test, you don't know. What a cool story. And thank you, Alex, for reading that. You read it very, very well. I like big chunks of the Bible. For those of you who've never met me, my name is Steve. I live at Molong. I'm married to a fine lady called Sarah. Her name is Sarah. I've got 2 adult children who no longer live at home. And it's my pleasure to be here this morning to share this with you. So, of all the stories, I better turn this thing on. Yep, good. Of all the stories in the Old Testament, of all the prophets and kings, of sin and idols, of warriors and women, there is one story that is never let go of: Israel's journey out of Egypt. From slavery to freedom. God's great act of salvation. The Exodus. Now, most of you may well be aware that there is an app that you can get on your phone, or you can just go to their website, called Bible Gateway. If you plug into Bible Gateway and you type in "brought out of Egypt," it will tell you that it is referred to 63 times in Scripture, those words, "brought you out of Egypt," or "brought out of Egypt." Now, a few of those are the people whinging, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt?" But for 60 of those events, 60 times, the narrative takes us back to that point in history. It is the reference point. It's like the pivot. It's the defining of God's character. It is the precursor for the introduction of the law. It is the start of the persistent failure by God's people. And it is the establishment of what Christ will eventually fulfill. It is the place where we see protected by blood. So, is it just a story? Did God really cause 10 plagues in Egypt? Was there really a Pharaoh who hardened his heart so badly that he bankrupted his entire nation? Is it real? Is it true that the ocean actually split in two? Is it imagery? Is it metaphors? Is it just, stories intended to help uneducated, nomadic people to believe that they had a past, that they were somehow significant? There's plenty of people in the world who would agree with that mindset. It's just storytelling, fairy tales. Yeah? Maybe not kids go to bed story tales because, like lots of people died, but it's just stories to help people. Well, if we're going to be honest, that's exactly what people should think. That's exactly what people should think. Now, I can hear you going, what? See, secular archaeology says that there was no Semitic, Canaanitic, Hebrew mass migration from Egypt in the 12th century BC, nor was there any invasion of Canaan of the same time, or 40, 50 years later. And now you add to that silence from Christians, paralysed by their lack of knowledge of the very book that they hold as their treasure. And so-called Bible believers who quickly scramble to reinterpret this book because of secular statements. You add those two together and the result is, why should anyone view this story as anything but a fairy tale? Well, today I'd like to contend with you that the Exodus event is of ridiculously high value. It is not satisfactory for us to leave it as a fairy tale. It is not good enough that we dare to interpret the Bible to fit secular ignorance. It is not good enough that you or I are paralysed into fearful silence by our lack of understanding. 60 times God has pointed you back to it. It is ridiculously important. So where do we go wrong? Where does the world go wrong in understanding this story? Well, firstly, it is the use of a single word in the biblical text. Ramesses. The Egyptological assumption, that's the Egypt logic, that word. The assumption is that the use of this word in the book of Exodus is a direct link to Ramesses II, the great industrious pharaoh Ramesses. Ramesses the Great of the 12th century BC. And so logically, therefore, because of that assumption, the flow-on assumption is that then this event happens in the 12th century BC. Do you see how that works? So the assumption, Ramesses comes first, Exodus comes after. And it assumes that the mention of his store city is to do with him. However, there is a quote in one of the greatest Steven Seagal movies of all time, like that high-grade actor, right? Doesn't get above C-grade movies, but Steven Seagal. And this assumption, I've adjusted it because it has a swear word in it in the original, but it is, assumption is the mother of all stuff-ups. Genesis 47 interchanges the name Goshen and Ramesses. See, if we don't continue to look in the text, we don't see this. But Genesis 47 interchanges those two words, Goshen and Ramesses. And it is a place, it is not a person. It is the place where Jacob's family settles. And subsequently, Ramesses, the store city, could well be the store city of Goshen, of the Israelites. And so the assumption that Ramesses cannot refer to anything or anyone else is stupid. And in doing these assumptions, we assume a second thing, and that is the dating of Egypt. The dating of Ramesses the Great is accurate. Right? Who's watched the documentary and they say, yeah, it was like the 11th century that this happened. And then it was the 10th century that this happened. Yeah, and we go, and we nod like chickens. until next week when they find some obscure thing in a sand dune and they go, oh, hang on, we have to rewrite all the history again because it doesn't work anymore. Did you know that every culture that hugs the Mediterranean Sea, there's a lot of those cultures. You have all of the North African cultures, you then have the Middle Eastern cultures, you have into Turkey, and then you have Macedonia, Croatia, and you have everything right around to Spain. All of those cultures, every single one of them, their history is dated by Egypt, not by themselves. So if you stuff Egypt up and keep adjusting Egypt, what do you have to do to all the other ones? You have to keep adjusting them all, right? And so, oh my goodness, hang on, we're out by this, we're out by that. If you assume dark periods, which we do in Egypt, oh, we don't have any artifacts for 200 years, so let's just put a dark period in. Everybody else gets dark periods as well. How crazy is this? It's illogical, but this is what happens. If you can't join the dots and you put a black hole in Egypt, Turkey is out by 200 years. Well, secondly, there's a second thing that is perhaps way more important than assuming Ramesses and a date. And that is that we think too highly of this guy, Emperor Constantine. Does anyone know anything about Emperor Constantine? I have no chocolates today. I'm sorry, Heather. Does anyone know anything about this guy called Constantine? Yep.
He is the guy that made Christianity the state religion of Rome.
Okay, did everyone hear that? He is the guy who made Christianity the state religion for Rome. Yes. He's a historical figure, first and foremost. He's another guy who called himself great. Always beware of the people who call themselves great. It's generally, they've got a problem. So he reportedly becomes a Christian in 312 AD. He even made statues of himself. Okay, there he is. Now that conversion to Christianity in 312 AD, that marks the start of socially acceptable Christian worship, and it marked the commencement of the Roman Universal or Catholic Church. And it created the precedent for the inclusion of the Christian emperor high up in the church. And so we have a combination of church and state. Somewhere in there, you're going to say, I don't like one of those points or lots of those points in history. Well, during his reign, Constantine was very consistent in seeking God's counsel. How did he do that? He did it with supernatural visions. That's how he did it. And so he would wait for a dream from God. This included on the battlefield. The soldiers would wait while Constantine went. And what did he do? Well, he had a tent made, sort of like Moses' tent, and he would go and meet with God, have a dream, come out, and then tell them when they had to go into battle. Right? It's a pretty interesting guy. Well, one of his dreams was the exact location of Mount Sinai. I think I've got here we go. Okay, here's a map for you. The exact location of Mount Sinai. So let's do a very quick bit of geography for everybody. Can someone please tell me, no chocolate, unfortunately, sorry Russ. Yeah. In the car park once more. Okay, so over here, see, now, is anyone colourblind? Yeah, Russ is colourblind, so he can't see the red pointer either. That's why I've got to start over on the black screen and then bring it across because I can't see it either. Okay, so over here we have Jerusalem. Can everyone see that? Yeah. Okay, so this bit of land up and down here is called what? Israel, Palestine, Canaan, the Promised Land, Levant, whatever you want to call it. Okay, to the right, there's a place that's got a big heading there. It's called? Jordan. Okay, up here, there's a city called? Okay, where's that? Today? Syria. Okay, you've got a place called Beirut, which is Lebanon. Okay, you're getting the idea. Down here, what's right down in this little corner? Saudi Arabia. This place here, what's this thing? That's Cairo, but what's the big green thing? The Nile Delta of Egypt. And this is the Nile. Beautiful. Are we good? Excellent. What's over here? Sand. So we get to like Tunisia and places like that. Okay, what's this big V in the middle? The Sinai Peninsula. Yeah, okay. So this is where he has his dream, the Sinai Peninsula, although it's not called the Sinai Peninsula in 312 AD. Okay? So he dispatches Constantine. This is what Constantine does. He has his dreams about various things, like where was Jesus born is another one of these. And so he dispatches Mum, Helena. He sends her off on a tour of North Africa in this event, south of Israel, Palestine. And so she walks around and she says, show me a mountain nearby. So they show her mountain nearby. She points to the ground and says, this is Mount Sinai. And everyone goes, okay, because, you know, like Queen of Hearts, off with your head if you disobey. And so she commissions that a small church be built there. That church is built. A couple of hundred years later, that is built over the top of again with a monastery, and that monastery is called St. Catherine's. Point and build. Point and build. There is lots of these locations throughout Constantine's empire. One of them, it is hilarious, is on the shores of Galilee, where Helena said, where did Jesus multiply the loaves and fishes? And someone points at a rock, literally a rock on the ground. Well, they build a church over the top of that. It is called the Church of the Multiplication of Loaves and Fishes. You can go there today. It's beautiful mosaics all around it. And the rock is covered in human grease from people patting the rock, right? You know, like, my goodness me. Point and build, point and build. And so a mountain is claimed. Here it is here. And so it is called Sinai, it's where St. Catherine's is, and therefore the peninsula that holds the mountain is then given a name, and that is the Sinai Peninsula. Shortly after, cartographers, map writers, start to do their thing quite extensively. And so they continue on with that title, and 1700 years later, we can look at Google Maps and we have the same thing located. If I asked you where you think Mount Sinai is, most of you will say on the Sinai Peninsula. And so you would say this is the route, something like this is the route that had to be for the Exodus. Why? Because Bible commentators will follow suit with the cartographers, and so they'll start talking about a reed sea, and they'll start talking about a lagoon instead of the sea, or a marsh, or a swamp, or a creek. And so we must use the left arm of the Red Sea as the sea crossing. That's the Gulf of Suez. And so we cross the sea, as you can see there, to get to the mountain on the peninsula so that Constantine is happy. Without a single piece of evidence to show that it's true. Not one piece. Now let's just state something. I want to state something that's really obvious. It should be really obvious to most of us if we know maps at all. No, I'll go backwards. I won't go back. Can you guys advance it? Thank you very much. And that is this. Can everybody see? Oh, hang on. Where's my red pointer? I can't find my pointer. There it is. Okay, cool. Okay, can you see where it says Israel? And next to the I in Israel, there's a white line going down here. Can everyone see that? And that's a border, right? That is the border that has been forever and a day. It's been the border of Egypt. So if they went to Sinai, which was apparently here, they're still in Egypt. What? Brought you out of Egypt 60 times. But if we go with where Constantine says it is, they never left Egypt for 40 more years than when they ran away from Pharaoh. Can everyone see this? This doesn't make sense? So either, we have two options here. Either the book in your lap, the book up here in front of me, is lying, and God lies 60 times, or we're in the wrong location. I will contend with you that this problem is not that God lies. Sorry? Yeah, maybe the great wasn't so great. Well, what should we do about that? We should do what the reformers did when they were like, hang on, something's not right. Ad fontes is the word. Back to the source. Let's go back to the original and find out what the original has to say. In other words, let us open our Bibles and look. Okay, so please do that if you have shut yours already. So, it broke. No, slowly. Was that you or me who did that? It was both of us. Okay, rightio. So Exodus 13 and 14, what was read to us today. It's a great story. Well, there's some claims in here that are pivotal to the story. I've pulled them out for you, so you don't have to try and go through them. So here they are. 13 verse 17. God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country. Well, where's that? On our next slide, I think I'll ask the sound desk to advance the slides and I'll just use the pointer, okay? One more slide, please. So again, our little pointer, here we go. Can you see there's a little tiny white dotted line here? Gee, I'm really wobbly. There's a little tiny white dotted line there, okay? That little strip there. That's the Philistine country. It's known as Gaza, the Gaza Strip. It is still contentious ground and not a place you want to wander through easily today. He didn't want to lead them that way because they might face war. The next one, 13:18. Instead, by the desert road towards the Red Sea. So, instead of going by the coast road, the tourist drive, we're going to go a different way through the desert. Well, here's the peninsula, and it's going to be, and if we can zoom in once more, if we can click forward, there we go. We can actually find there's roads that go through, ancient roads that go through this peninsula, through the desert. They are then to encamp near Pi Hahiroth. Well, Pi Hahiroth is a word, okay? And it means the mouth of the pass. A path is a way through mountainous regions. It's the start or the end of a way through the wilderness. Now, in our Bibles, our English translation that's come through Europe and etc., we read the word desert. But the original is actually wilderness. And wilderness can be either a desert, a place that wants to kill you, or it can be a mountainous area that wants to kill you as well. Well, what do we got here? We've got some serious mountains. That picture is of the beach. If we can go back one, that is the picture of that beach there. Here it is here. Okay? You can actually see that little green stripe. Okay, this is the Nuweiba beach, and if we go forward, there it is there. There's the green stripe there. Who knows, they're evaporating some algae to make some medical thing, whatever. But it is a mountainous region with a road going through it. If I was going to describe this, If I was walking through it and keeping a journal, I would probably say, when I got to this thing, I would say, we got to the mouth of the pass. Or we got to Pi Hahiroth, if we said it in Hebrew. Now 14 verse 3, it says that they were wandering around, hemmed in by the desert. Again, wilderness, in the wilderness pass. I want to contend with you that once you enter a pass through mountain areas, there's no getting out. You don't sort of go, oh, we're halfway through, I think we might stop about now, I'm a little bit tired. Can we just take the off-ramp? There's no off-ramps in these places. There is a canyon further north of this place. There's a place called Petra on the edge of Jordan. Now, to get into Petra, it is a canyon. And I'm going there later this year, and some of you are coming with me. To get in there, you literally have to walk through this canyon. It's like 40-metre high cliffs, both sides. There's no let's get out halfway. You're in, and you're hemmed in. There's nowhere to go. Well, Scripture is telling us exactly that they are hemmed in their journey by the mountains, by the wilderness. And there is a further location mentioned, and that is between Migdol and the sea. Migdol is a word that literally means lookout. Where do you find a lookout? You're going to go to a lookout. You're going to take the lady of your life for a candlelit picnic at a lookout. Where are you going? Heather? High. You're going high. Okay, so you either go up a mountain, looking over something, or you build a tower and you go to the top. We do it today. You know, how much dearer is it to have the lookout unit in a block of a tower of houses, apartments? What do we call it? It's the penthouse. It's the lookout. You know, and of course, all of us at one stage have had the little sneaky idea that maybe if I just push the top button, maybe I can see the view and then get told to run away. It's a really good, interesting way of getting good views. Go to Sydney, go to the office blocks, just choose the highest floor you can go to, walk in there and say, can I please get a job application form? They'll take you 10 minutes to find a paper one for you, so you can sit there and enjoy the view. It's a pretty cool way of passing the time. I haven't done that for 30 years, but I did do it. So we need a lookout. And so if we have a look here, what do you reckon? Where's my pointer? What do you reckon one of these would be? A lookout. It's describing it for you, isn't it? What does it next say? It says, 14 verse 21, there's a strong east wind and they go through the sea on dry land. Okay, if we're going to cut a path through water, we need a cranking bit of wind to do that. It's in an east-west direction. Is that fair? Like it says, an east wind, so we're looking for an east-west direction. If we go to our map once more, what do we find? That the Nuweiba Beach, where's my pointer? Yes. Here we go, Nuweiba Beach is here. And wow, look, like the land on the other side is like in an east-west direction. Wow! It's written again. And it says, 14:22, it says, a wall of water on their right and on their left. A wall, it says, on both sides. Not a drying up of a creek. Not a, like the tide got held back for a few extra hours. These are walls, and walls are tall. If walls are tall, then that would imply that the seabed is deep. Well, this right arm of the Red Sea, this right arm, hang on, where's my pointer? This is terrible for colourblind people. This right arm of the Red Sea is deep. It is really deep. How deep? Well, it is part of the Jordan Rift Valley that goes all the way up. Okay, that's the Sea of Galilee there. This is the Dead Sea. Dead Sea, lowest point on the Earth's surface. This is the same rift. This is the same thingy. How deep is this water here? There's spots in the Gulf of Aqaba that are 4 kilometres deep. Yeah, you can see the other side. From one side to the other, you can see it. Interestingly, there's a little undersea bridge, right? It's like right there at the Nuweiba beach. There's a little, it comes up and goes back down from all the sand coming down that canyon. And so it's nowhere near as deep, but it's still deep, so you get a wall of water. So if we take God at his word, we should have tick, 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 tick. Everything is working out. It's just not where Constantine dreamt it was. Maybe the Bible might be correct about this. Maybe this is where we should consider. And if we do that, then something else will catch our attention. You're going to love this. This one got me really excited, if it will advance. Okay. Does anybody here remember the 6-Day War? Heather does, yes. Generally, that will be people who are older. 1967, okay? Leading up to 1967, Egypt was being very, very painful to Israel. And Egypt owns the Suez Canal, okay? And that's your shipping route to get stuff out of the Indian Ocean and into the Mediterranean. Does everyone understand that? It's got locks on it. You have to pay royalties to get your freight through and all that sort of stuff. Well, they were charging double to Israel than any other country, okay? Islamic country, Jewish country, you get the idea, right? And then they would stop the boats and not let them through and all sorts of stuff. And Israel said, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And then they did it once more. And so Israel said, I've had enough of this. So Israel launched a military campaign against Egypt. So swift was this that they destroyed the entire Egyptian air force in the first morning. They didn't even know it was coming. Jordan, ally to Egypt, thought it was a rumour, fake news, because there's no way that Israel could take out all of Egypt's defences like in a morning. So they didn't do anything for a week. So the 6-Day War raged for 6 days. Okay, in that time, Israel actually pushed into Jordan as well, took the Golan Heights. They went north, they pushed, they let back, but it was highly, very exciting. Well, in that time, they invaded the Sinai Peninsula. And when they did, they found something on the beach of Nuweiba. So this is the beach, and I've circled it for you. It was a 5-metre long cylindrical pillar lying on the edge of the shore. Now, it was made from red granite, and that is a rock not native to the Gulf of Aqaba or the peninsula. What's it doing there? Now, the wave action had smoothed any and all inscriptions on it, but the Israelis took the time and effort to grab that pillar and erect it right next to the road, 200 metres away, complete with concrete footings so it can't fall down again. It stands there today. You can go and see it. You can look at it on Google Maps. They erected it directly opposite. There's the pillar. I've drawn it in for you, okay? They erected it directly opposite another pillar that is, hang on, where's my pointer again? Is here. There's another one, a matching one on the other side, on the Saudi Arabian side. Now, the one on the Saudi Arabian side was upright, was standing upright, as it has for a long time. It's well back from the water's edge. So it's there. And it has Hebrew inscriptions written on it. Whoa, hang on. Jewish writing in an Islamic country. What? How did that happen? Here they are. The one on the left is the one in Saudi Arabia. The one on the right is in Egypt. You can see the mountainous areas both sides as the rift comes down to the water's edge. Now, the Saudi Arabian government was told, was told that they had this pillar. They didn't know they had this pillar in the 70s, and mysteriously it vanished very fast. There's now a round piece of granite in the ground. It's been sheared off at ground level. Isn't that interesting? Just vanished. What was written on that pillar, its inscriptions are intact. And here's what was written on that pillar before it was removed. The word Moses, Mizraim, which is Hebrew for Egypt, death, Yahweh, and Solomon. Isn't that curious? Why would there be this pillar? What do you reckon? Do you wonder if there might have been someone in the past with so much wisdom, so much brain power, that when he's reading the book of the law, which is his requirement as king of Israel, that he thinks, where did this exactly happen? I'm going to send some scouts to have a bit of a look. We're going to work out where this occurred. And then to mark where this all happened, he erected some pillars to show where they crossed the sea. And of course, because he thought he was great as well, he decided to sign his name on the pillars as well. What would we have? We'd have 2 matching pillars on either side of the Red Sea with a generalised statement about the Exodus and signed by Solomon. Isn't that interesting? What a coincidence. Couldn't possibly have anything to do with it, could it? No. Well, what if we let the natural world now speak? Just forward that one about this place. Here we go. There's a pretty picture. Who likes pretty pictures of coral? No one likes pretty pictures of coral. I invested 4 years at uni to become a marine biologist. I'm a marine biologist who lives 400 kilometres from the coast. These are really pretty pictures, right? Well, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aqaba in particular, it is a coral reef sea. It grows, that means it grows corals. Is that understandable, right? A coral reef sea. Now, corals can't grow on sand. They must grow on a structure. So that's a rock or a log or more coral, dead coral, a jetty pier, an abandoned anchor. And when they do this in banks of stuff, when they grow, they're then called a reef. And so the Great Barrier Reef is almost a single right up the coast of Australia, or Queensland. But at Nuweeba, let me take another photo here, if we advance one. Here we go, some bit of research going on. The Red Sea is full of researchers at the moment because these corals don't bleach like the Australian corals, so they're really interested in what's going on. But what we find is that the reefs aren't big like the Great Barrier Reef. It's almost like it's a junkyard of coral, being thrown around everywhere, little pieces everywhere. That's interesting. And a lot of those bits of coral, those bits of stuff, have 90-degree angles in them. 90 degrees is not like a natural degree, right, in nature, generally speaking. Now, I pulled this picture off the Red Sea Coral Research Institute website, okay? Now, you're looking at the pretty coral and the lady cutting pieces off the coral. But if you actually look just behind her, what have we got? What have we got here? Oh, look at that. That looks natural, doesn't it? What about this circular thing up the back there? What's that one? It's a UFO crash landed. Now, if we look further, this is what we start to find. Coral in the same location that's growing like this. Now you go, ooh, that looks a bit interesting, doesn't it? And if we look even further, whoa, too far. We get circular ones. How do you grow coral in a circle? Because you have to have the circle to start with, right? It's pretty simple. Well, look at that. Oh, that's an artist's impression, right? There's not one there with a pipe like that, right? But if you go with a metal detector and stick it on these things, the metal detector goes nuts on the column. Interesting. And then if we look even a little bit further, One guy found this one, a 4-spoke wheel. Now, why is that important? Well, that's pretty important because in the 5th century BC, that was the last century that the Egyptian army used a 4-spoke chariot wheel. The 15th century was the start of a 6-spoke chariot wheel. And when they go to this one, it's got 6 spokes go on the metal detector. And this one has 4 spokes on the metal detector. Wow, isn't that interesting? But 11th century, 12th century, 8 spokes. No 8 spokes in any of the coral formations. Isn't that interesting? Ramesses mightn't have been the right Ramesses. Is there enough evidence yet? Is there enough for you to go, this has some credibility? Perhaps Constantine and Mum were wrong in their point and build program. Could it be that God was telling the truth? And the more we look, the more we find evidence to support it. Let's assume for a moment that that is the case and that this is the spot. And so the Exodus map will look something like this. I did it in red for you, Russ, so we can see it, mate. See? Well, if that's the case, then see how it goes across the water. Hang on, where's my pointer? There we go. It crosses the water. Somewhere here, we're going to need something. What are we going to need? We're going to need a mountain. And not just a mountain, a great big scary mountain, right? This is the place that made people tremble with fear. Well, that's generally, this area of the world is not the place that tourists go. This is in like the really harsh area of Saudi Arabia. So you generally don't go there, right? You don't sort of just go wandering around there, especially if you're a Caucasian carrying your Bible. Well, if I look at Google Maps, and I can just do it today, you can do it when you go home, and there's the Nuweiba Beach up there. This thing shows up as a national park. Jebel El Lawz. That's a funny name, isn't it? Well, it's not very funny if you then break it down to what's meaning. Jebel means mountain. Al or El is the pronoun his. And laws, I'm pretty sure that means a set of rules. So there is a place just down the road from the possible site where they crossed the water that is called the Mountain of His Law. That's a curious coincidence, isn't it? Now, this name is not a new name. That is the Bedouin name for this mountain that has been the Bedouin name for 3,000 years. Maybe if Constantine had actually maybe asked some locals, like, is there a place? They might have said, oh yeah, there's a place called the Mountain of His Law. It's down the road. Oh, all of our maps and our understanding would be very different today had he made just that, taken that little bit of time in 315 AD. Well, if we go to that national park, here's what we find. So there we go, there would be the route, something like that. And then if we go there, we find a mountain, like mountainous regions, with a mountain. Now I want you to take note. It's a clear day. There's no clouds in the sky, and it is in shadow, or dark, or black. Why would it be black when all the other mountains are not? Like it was maybe on fire at some stage. There should be another picture, if we can advance one. There you go. That's what it looks like. Now, if you can sneak up there, and some people have, and you turn the rocks over up the top, they're not black rocks. They're red, reddy brown. They're just black on one side. Like they got nuked by fire. Anyone know of a mountain that was on fire for like a bit of a scary time? Well, what else would we need to confirm this? Well, 10 kilometres up the road from Jebel el-Lawz, before you get to Jebel el-Lawz, there's this sticking out of the ground. That's a funny looking rock, isn't it? Is that a funny looking rock? Yeah, that thing's like 3 stories high, right? It's big. Now, it's surrounded by a basin. And so there you can see all the sand. The red dot is where that is. And then you can see all this, well, where's my pointer? There we go. You see all that sand area or the low area around it, that would form a lake, could form a lake, right? Because if you had like the magic wand, right, the magic staff that you can hold over the ocean and it tears it in two, what would happen if you whacked a rock with the same magic stick? Yeah, you'd tear the rock in half and water would gush out and fill a lake so that 2 million people could get a drink. Because like if it dribbled out of the rock, just think about it for a second, 2 million people line, dribbling out of the rock, and you got your cup, right? How long is it going to take? Don't think you're going to make it before you die of dehydration, right? And they're already by the time of needing water, they're like, oh, was it because there's no graves? We're dying, there's no water, right? And I get it. I've walked around the Jordan Rift Valley and it doesn't take long for you to go, no, my tongue's not working anymore because I'm really, really dehydrated. Now, let's say that this was flowing water for 41 years and has a lake at the bottom of it. If you were a community nearby and you heard that suddenly there's fresh water, surface water, available, what would you do? Would you go, oh, that's very nice? No. What would you do? If you were like another community, not the Israelites who are camped right around this, I'm not talking about them. Other people, what would happen? You would be jealous, first thing. Second thing, you'd say, as we all know, water is actually the most precious resource on the earth. You'd say, I want it. Yeah? Well, what would you do then? You'd attack to clear the other people so you can get some water, yeah? Well, if you weren't strong enough to do it yourself, what would you do? You'd pay someone to do it. Well, there was this band of people through the Middle East called the Amalekites. And the Amalekites never had their own home country. They were, mercenaries for hire. Just in your Bibles, just flick forward, like 2 pages to like the 17, the big 17. And halfway through the chapter, what will we find? The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites. Where? At Rephidim, the place of water. That matches, doesn't it? Isn't that interesting? Constantine didn't see this one in a dream. Now, interestingly, those neighbouring societies, you know, what happens, can anyone put their hand up if they have moved to an area? You know, like, not you weren't born, like I know some of you were born on the farm that you now live on or whatever, but you've moved into an area. Who's done that? I've done that. I moved from Sydney up to Molong and it's like, what do? You watch what everyone around you does, right? How do you know what bin night is? You watch. Have you, actually on that, who has a bin night? Who has bin night? Yeah. Have you ever thought about playing mind games and you get out early, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and put out the wrong bin and see how many people in the neighbourhood put the wrong bin out and then go and change it? You could be very nasty, couldn't you? Anyway, mess with people's heads. But you watch what others do around you, right? Okay, now if you're people who have been slaves forever and you've suddenly come into this place, you've never been here before, it all looks a bit foreign, there's no delta, there's no crops growing, etc., etc. And the boss guy with the magic stick has gone up the mountain that's on fire and hasn't come back. He's been barbecued for sure. What do? Would you not start to look to the other communities around you, big or little, and start to copy them? Well, near this rock in Saudi Arabia are these engravings. Cattle worship. Calf worship. I don't think I need to tell you to flick forward in your Bibles to Exodus 32 to know that the Israelites did what? Started to worship cattle. Wouldn't it be hilarious if someone wrote a story like this? Bedtime story, fairy tale. Can you advance that for me, mate? And one more. And one more. What if all of this is not a story, but is true? If it be true, then something at the heart of this story is true. 60 times. 60 times God points to this very event, his rescue of his people from Egypt. 60 times does he use this event to reveal himself. This event was the demonstration of his character, that he is the God who saves. I am who I am. I will be known by what I do. I am the God who saves. This event is where we get not only the 10 Commandments, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, but it is also where we get the chesed of God. God's description of himself. The Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger and abounding in love and faithfulness. 60 times God appeals to this story. Do you remember who I am and what I have done? Well, this story is commemorated. God called on the Israelite nation to commemorate the revelation of his character by feasting together each year on the 10th day of the first month. The meal was called Passover. At the heart of this meal is the true certainty that a lamb was killed, a lamb without blemish, without fault, was killed so that blood would be spilt. And God promised that the blood of the lamb was the security for his people. When he sees the blood, his judgment and wrath and devastation would be withheld. That is recorded for you in the chapter preceding today's reading. Exodus 12. He would pass over their house on that terrifying night in Egypt. Well, 1,500 years after that event, approximately, that meal was celebrated by a humble man with his friends and one enemy. The man was without blemish, and he revealed to his friends and followers that night that Passover had been a future picture about himself, the man who was labelled the Lamb of God. It would be his perfect blood without blemish that would stay the hands of God's wrath and judgment, not for just one evening while they run, but for eternity, for all who trust him. The man's name is Jesus, whose name literally means God's salvation. And his blood is just as precious today, if not more so, because I think I'm probably more sinful than the Israelites. We are in just as much need of the security of blood that stays the hand of God. Deep is our sin, and wide is our path of destruction. I was only thinking this morning, how wide is my path? It's a 365 lane highway. Every day, it's full speed, isn't it? Sin, 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 sin. But by God's character, his grace, the blood of Jesus sets us free. What if it's true? Chariots and wind and water. If that is true, then the claim that Jesus makes, that it is his blood that sets free, that's suddenly gone from fairy tale 2 to something way more significant. My friends, what is your answer to it? What do you do with the blood of Jesus? What do you do with that cross? The event 2,000 years ago. Is it lying on the ocean of your life, covered in coral? Whatevs. If we don't look, we don't have to worry about it, we don't have to know, but I am the great anyway. What is your answer to the most outrageous claim of all time? God loves people. I urge you to not be a fool. Finish the investigation. It is 60 times ridiculously important. Let me pray for you. Great God of heaven, the one who commands the wind and the waves, the one who saves, the one who loves us. Father, we acknowledge that very often we can doubt you and we can pick and choose what we do and don't want to know about you. Awesome God, we ask that you'd change that in us. Cause us to look fully in your face, to see you in all of your majesty, and to see Christ the centre of all of it, as he truly is, the God of all things. Amen.